What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad Podcast. Today, I am excited to have another conversation with Shawn Stratton. Shawn, you and I chatted over on the Delegate That podcast, focused a little bit more on nothing but the business and delegation and leadership over on episode 33. For those of you listening, if you want to go over and check it out on the Delegate That podcast, you can hear Shawn again. But Shawn, I'm looking forward to hearing more about the family side of the house, as well as digging into some more business over here. If you can you go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us about your family, and tell us about your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on again on a similar show, but different. I appreciate it. It's great chatting with you again. I really enjoyed our last episode and look forward to diving into more of the dad stuff and family stuff here with some business chat. I currently living in Calgary, Alberta. So we're Canadian, and I have a wife, Alexandra, and 3 kids, 3 girls. They are 14, 12, and 8. Very active and energetic and athletic young ladies that are not that small anymore. They're growing very fast, especially the oldest one. She might be up to my height soon. And yeah, great family. Things are going really well. And my current business is Schooley Mitchell. It's a cost reduction company. And it's been around for 30 years. I bought into the franchise a little over a year ago, and I've been operating for a year. And we do cost reduction for all kinds of businesses, nonprofits, government organizations to help them save money on their operating costs. We have 16 different categories that we work with. And a lot of them are tertiary categories, secondary categories. We don't deal with the staffing or the insurance or leasing, but kind of our big categories would be shipping, less than truckload shipping, small package shipping, merchant service fees, waste removal, so dumpsters, telecom, uniforms and linens, and on and on. We can get more into those categories. And so, yeah, how it works is we do a no-cost audit of the cost category. Kind of at a high level, that's how we operate. We analyze the last 3 months of their invoices, and we do some fact finding, find out what their needs are, if they like their vendor, if they don't like their vendor, what they like about them, things like that. We do a negotiation with the current vendor and at least two competitors. Our biggest competitive advantage is that we've been around for 30 years and we do have over 30,000 past business clients. And so we have the data to essentially know what everybody else is paying for those services. When so many businesses in these categories are leaving money on the table because they may be good at negotiation, but they really don't know what the benchmark is in that community, in that cost category. And so we negotiate essentially on data, which is hard to fight against when we have the proof. And we do that no cost audit. We find our savings and then we present a value report to our clients. The value report basically says this is our findings. These are our A, B, and C recommendations. You can read it over and decide what you want to do to go forward. Hopefully we found significant savings for you. And then it's a 3-year contract where sometimes 4 years, 3 to 4 year contract where you would pay us 50% of the savings over the next 3 years. And so I'm essentially not selling anything. It doesn't come out of your budget. You can't say we can't afford you. We're just it's paying for itself. If you're got $1,000 bill for your waste a month, we save you $500. You're just paying us $250 and you're keeping $250 for 3 years. And then after that, you keep 100%. So, that's kind of the business and kind of the business model in a nutshell.
Well, I know people don't like saving money, so it's got to be a terrible business to be in.
That's right.
So, yes.
Yeah. And the big thing we do obviously save money, but we also, 2 other big things that we really promote is that we obviously save time. Because I'm not sure if you've called your cell phone provider lately, but they're not usually the quickest conversations, especially to change a contract. So we save you time, and then we also provide security to know that hey, these people are experts in their field, and I know that I'm getting the absolute best price. Because so many people are out there that are like, I don't know if I'm getting the best price, and I don't have the time to go and research to see if I am. Well, it's like, bring us in, and we'll assure you that you are getting the best price for the service that level that you want.
Welcome to the BizDad Podcast, where we dive into the melding of fathership and entrepreneurship with your host, the original BizDad himself, Adam Labar. Adam is a Christian, a former Air Force officer, a dad to 3 amazing kids, a coach, a real estate investor, and a business owner. On this podcast, he'll explore the unique journeys of amazing dads who are striving for greatness in both business and family. So whether you're a dad who is an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply a man striving to be a better dad, get ready as the BizDad brings you conversations to inspire, challenge, and equip you to be a better dad and entrepreneur. And now, here's Adam.
So I want to, as I always do, or often do, kind of rewind. Like I can't imagine somebody just kind of walks right into to doing a Schofield Schooley Mitchell, thank you.
Yeah,
Schooley Mitchell franchise. There's got to be some background story. So I want to rewind really far back to kind of your upbringing. Like oftentimes I like to ask about the dads because we kind of understand, sometimes I talk to the guys on here and they have never thought about what their dad was like other than just the image they had in their head about it. But other people have analyzed a lot about, my dad, I know his upbringing that helped me understand who he was. So I'd love to rewind a little bit to kind of get your picture and your understanding of who your dad was and what your life was like growing up for you and both your parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up in St. John's, Newfoundland, which is the far eastern point of Canada. It's the most easterly point in North America. Had a great childhood. My father was a CPA with KPMG for 20 years as a tax accountant, and then moved into private business and was in private business for a bunch of years, and then ended up buying several businesses with some partners, and then kind of was CEO, president of a couple different companies before he ended up retiring. In his kind of late 60s. And I had a kind of pretty idyllic childhood. My parents were together up until my father passed a few years ago, and never ever saw them fight. Maybe about cleaning the basement. That's the only thing they seem to argue about in front of us anyway, is like, do we get rid of this? Do we keep this? I don't want to deal with it. But yeah, I had a very athletic childhood, played every sport imaginable. My parents were, they were never pushing us. They weren't coaches. Sometimes I wondered, it's like, why are the other kids' dads coaching? Why isn't dad coaching?
Mm-hmm.
And dad was always really busy with work. I think he didn't have a lot of hobbies. I think he was a bit of a workaholic, and that was kind of his hobby. And so, would provide every opportunity in terms of, we would make it work financially. We weren't, extremely wealthy, but we were probably middle class. And, if I needed that equipment for that event, or if I needed to travel for those sporting events, like they always, seemed to make that happen for us, which, greatly appreciated. I wouldn't say he was that involved. He was probably a classic 80s dad of, dad's working, mom's home, mom's driving. I think mom had a little license plate holder. It said Mom's Taxi at one point.
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
And so, 3 boys. I had 2 brothers. I was the middle child. And as we grew up, I think I was probably a bit more like, my personality was probably a bit more like my mother than my father. My father being a CPA, and then both of my brothers ended up being CPAs. I'm the oldest and youngest, and I ended up, the middle child. And if there's a black sheep in our family, it's probably me. I went more the adventure, travel, follow your passion kind of way in my first career anyway. And I think that really, it not splintered our relationship, but there was definitely a few years there where I can get into that career where that dad just didn't understand my career and what I was passionate about and what I was really good at. And every now and then he'd drop a comment that was pretty hurtful that, later I realized that he just didn't know how to relate to it, where both of my brothers are almost following the exact path that he took, and they could talk about spreadsheets all day long and accounting strategies and all that stuff. And so, my mom would always say, "Oh, your dad is so proud of you. Like, you should hear him talk about you at, dinner parties when people are asking, like, what's Shawn doing now or that?" I'm like, really? Like, I don't get that, and I don't think he's ever said I loved you once in his life. And I knew that he did, but it just, it's just kind of that era and that style. And, I'll provide for you and be around, but not certainly, when I think of the time I spent with my kids now and my brothers spend with their kids and people just in our generation, what they spend with their kids, it's certainly wasn't that. I don't picture dad on the floor playing with us as kids, or, every now and then he'd stop in the driveway as he came in from his car to shoot a few hoops for, 2 minutes in the basketball in the driveway, but certainly wasn't out there for hours like, hey, let's go practice or anything like that. So.
What's going on, everybody? I wanted to jump in and take a second to tell you about the awesome team over at Wise VAs. Oftentimes, as entrepreneurs, we can feel a bit overwhelmed with mundane tasks that eat up our valuable time, and it's time to reclaim that schedule, all right? It's time to stop doing some of those $10 an hour jobs and give them back to an elite group of talent that are there specifically to help you and help you stay in your zone of genius. So delegate those $10 an hour tasks to focus on more $1,000 an hour tasks. Reclaim what matters most in your life, which is your time. Get that amazing team of elite remote talent that is there to help support you and make sure that you are giving back the best to your company. So schedule a free strategy call at getwisevas.com/Adam. That is getwisevas.com/Adam. It is an amazing group, an amazing team. They do an awesome job with everything that they've got going on there. If you have some tasks on the side, whether it's administrative, whether it's editing, whether it's recording, whatever it is, they have got an assistant for you, someone who is going to be able to help you out and take some of those tasks off of your plate. I thank Wise VAs every day for helping me process all of these podcasts, helping me take care of a bunch of stuff in the background. And I definitely would recommend them over to you. So again, getwisevas.com/Adam. All right. Thanks a lot. Back to the show. So if you were to look back on it, I mean, you said your other two brothers followed in your dad's footsteps. Were you able to see that as a younger guy, like looking at, okay, my two brothers are a lot like, but I'm so different than these two. Like, was that something that was noticeable a long time ago, or did that not really come to fruition until later?
I would say probably not until like after high school. It's probably not something you're thinking about too much. Mm-hmm. In kind of high school, junior high, and middle age, as a kid, you're just kind of trying to figure things out. I wasn't like, I remember my dad. I think my brother put in his high school yearbook that like, dad, like, who's your idol? Those questions you answer in your high school yearbook, mm-hmm. and he put like my dad was his idol, and I was like, what? Like, dad, your idol? Like mine was like Mark Messier, like the Edmonton Oilers captain of the hockey team, the NHL, like that's where my head goes, or Mark Allen, who was an Ironman triathlete and won 6 world championships. And I was like, dad, your idol? So that was kind of probably the start of me picking up of like, oh, they're a lot more alike than I am of those, I appreciated everything dad provided for us, but it wasn't something, and I admired his work ethic and things like that, but it wasn't like, I never had that switch of like, I want to be like dad. Mm-hmm.
So when you kind of implied some of your previous career, so I want to go down that a little bit. Like, mm-hmm. What was your previous job that your dad kind of looked at like, I have no idea what the heck you do?
Yeah, so I spent 15 years working in adventure travel and more specifically outdoor education. I went to university and ended up wasn't sure what I was going to do, and ended up taking this course called Adventure-Based Experiential Education. It's a mouthful, but I still remember it. And I like to say that was kind of my light bulb moment, like light bulb course of learning about a career in outdoor education, meaning you can get paid to lead wilderness expeditions around the world, promoting personal growth and development and leadership. And I was like, wow, there's a whole world of this. Like growing up in Newfoundland, we're fairly isolated, and really popular companies in this field are Outward Bound. People may have heard of, and I end up working with Outward Bound. And then the other company that's really popular in this field, the world leaders in this field, is the National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS. And I learned about those at the time in the university in that class, and I was, just hook, line, and sinker of like, wow, that's what I want to do. Like, if I can get paid to travel the world in the remote places and, learning outdoor skills while I'm doing it and promoting personal growth, they kind of checked all my boxes. And I spent the next kind of 3 years working at different summer camps, working at some teen adventure programs. I did an internship my last year of college at Outward Bound in North Carolina, eventually trying to work myself up to apply for NOLS, the National Outdoor Leadership School, to their instructor's course and to go on and have a career with them. And, during that time, I think most people that work in outdoor education at some point have had a parent drop the saying, when are you going to get a real job?
Yeah.
We've all had that, I think, and we discuss about that and I can remember, on the phone, on a pay phone at this like camp that I was working at the time that my father said that to me. And I was like going to apply for this really, a job that was leading a 30-day it was like a 60-day expedition in the Arctic. And I was just so happy that I was confident enough to apply for this job. And I was like gushing about it. And that's when Dad dropped his comment. And, he I'm sure he forgot it 10 minutes later, but 30 years later, I remember standing at that payphone and hearing that. And it just vibrates through you. You're just like, this doesn't get it, where like mom was like the cheerleader of the parents of like, that's amazing. You can do it. You can take on the world. You can do anything you want, and, so yeah, those were some of the experiences. And then, going into working for outdoor education. And so I ended up eventually working with Knowles and spent most of 10 years with them and leading, kind of mostly 30 days up to 3-month-long expeditions, glacier mountaineering, sea kayaking, backpacking, whitewater canoeing, and all over the world, 6 of 7 continents. A lot of time in Alaska and the Yukon in the summers, a lot of time in Mexico in the winters, in the Baja Peninsula, sea kayak sailing, backpacking, glacier mountaineering in Alaska, and a couple of trips to India and the Himalayas and Africa and Australia, New Zealand. So I managed to get around.
That sounds super boring. I don't know why anybody would want to do that. Travel all over the place, see beautiful scenery, all this, talk about leadership. And I remember we talked about that over on the Delegate That podcast. And it was just so exciting to hear. Like, it's one of those things like, I look at buying small businesses and you hear people talk about like, what do you mean by small businesses? I'm like, there's so many businesses you don't think about at all out there, right? Yeah. Like, I've got a friend of mine that owns, when you go to a gas station, it's got like the translucent signage that's there that the lights are all behind everything. So there's very few companies in the world that make those, and he owns one of them that does that, right? And you drive by something like that every day and you're like, nobody thinks, oh, who makes that? What kind of business makes that, right? But when you're in there, you realize it. So you hear somebody like say, oh yeah, I teach people outdoor mountain, like while running around, teach people leadership while running around the mountains. You're like, that's not a job. Wait a minute. Yeah. You can actually do that and get paid for that? That's amazing. Like, there's just things you don't think about that are out there, the different opportunities.
Absolutely.
And just to stumble across it in college, that's awesome. What were you studying in college that course came up?
Yeah, it was a recreation management program. And so, it was a combination of like, I was really interested in kind of kinesiology and potentially phys ed, but I didn't want to be a phys ed teacher. And I was really interested in business. And so I was actually going into this program thinking like professional sports management. And that's what a lot of people kind of stare down, and they have, different specialties once you get into the program. And so I was thinking professional sports management and, working with a professional team on marketing, things like that. And it was in the recreation program that they had this course, and it was really inspiring instructor who had worked for several of these companies, and just ate it up, just loved every minute of it. And, excited. Like, it's one of those books, one of those classes, you keep the textbook for years from your class. Like, most books get tossed. I don't even know if they have textbooks. They probably don't have textbooks these days, but at the time, those textbooks like I kept and I used for, years later. It was really neat. Sometimes we boiled it down to camping for dollars, but it was a lot more than that. And working with Knowles, being the world, they were pretty much the world leader in this industry in wilderness education. And, we do custom programs for NASA astronauts, for all the NASA teams for 15 years that went up in the space shuttle. They would all come do custom courses with Knowles. We do custom programs for Wharton School of Business, backcountry ski trips with their executive MBA programs, and a lot of college programs. A lot of college students would come through their program. So it's a really reputable organization, and we're in that industry, we were the world leaders and top of the field. And so it was a lot of work to get there, and a challenging work when you're there. But Dad sitting home in his accounting office, seeing pictures of me, gallivanting around the world, doesn't quite get that. I'm like, no, I'm at the top of the game in my industry right now, Dad. Like, try to be proud of me, please.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Do you know what his upbringing was like? Do you have much insight into what his life was like growing up?
Yeah, a little bit. My grandfather grew up in a small fishing community in Newfoundland on the outskirts. Small fishing community about a couple hours outside of St. John's is the capital city in Newfoundland. A lot of people think of Newfoundland as like the whole province is one big fishing community. It's not that. St. John's is the biggest city. It's 200,000 people with a 15,000 person university. It's like any capital city in Canada, mostly Canada, US. But there's a lot of small fishing towns. And so he grew up in a small fishing village. And this is my grandfather left school, I think when he was in grade 8, because he had to start fishing with his father. He kind of leave to go and help out with the family. And he used to get seasick every day, but he had no choice. And so I think when he got like 16 or 17, and he could eventually no, I'm not doing it anymore. He got into carpentry and started building boats and eventually got into general contracting and building homes. And he eventually moved into St. John's. And he spent most of his career in the construction trade, owned a kind of a small construction company and built houses most of his life. This is back in the 40s and 50s. And my father always talked about that his father never wanted him to work in the construction industry. And he always wanted a better life for my dad. And so my father would hire all his nephews, because he had I don't know, 20 or 30 nephews or something. And so he'd hire nephews to work for his construction company, but he would never hire my dad to work for him because he never wanted dad to do this. And so he wanted dad to have a university degree and a better, maybe white collar job that's a bit easier on the body and probably the pocketbook than the general contracting industry. And so, that was interesting that, from a general contractor, home builder, my father ended up being an accountant for his first 20 years. And then he got into entrepreneurship as well. But that's kind of what I remember from his childhood about us saying how it was like his father didn't want him to do anything of that, but he was happy to hire nephews.
I wonder if that's kind of the thought process your dad had with you as well. It was like, no, I want him being able to be professional like I am and do all these things because that's what his dad was pushing onto him. And then I wonder if that was part of why he was just kind of like, what the heck are you doing? Like, because he didn't understand, but he had a different idea of where he wanted to go.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. He never ever suggested anything. He never said why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? He's pretty straight laced. I remember going away to university and then, moving me in, and we've been in the town in Nova Scotia in Halifax, and he was very straight laced. And we walked across the street and saw someone with tattoos and chains and whatever. And they were like, you better not end up looking like that. It was going to be my first year away from home. And dad was so on the straight and narrow. I can't imagine coming back with an earring and talking to dad and be like, hey dad, I had a great time at school. I think that probably wouldn't go over so well. Never, I always tried to get him to come visit me wherever I was in the world. Like, hey, come, I'll take you on a bit of a trip. And one thing he always said, and I started to get when I eventually got into entrepreneurship, he would say, I have enough adventure at work. I don't want any adventure on my vacation. And once I got into entrepreneurship and seeing him as a business owner now and all the struggles and, stress that business owners go through, I'm like, I kind of get it. Like his ideal vacation was go to St. Pete's Beach, Florida, and sit on the pool deck for a week and read a book and tan. Like that. And I remember we did that a few times as kids, and I'd last 10 minutes sitting out, and I'd go stir crazy and I'd to walk the beach or go play mini golf across the street or do something, and I couldn't just sit still. But his was that was decompressing for him.
Yeah, I would imagine. I wonder if it would have been better off for him to go on those hikes and go out on those adventures that actually have a true release, where your brain can just focus on nothing but the mountain air and the exhaustion that you're feeling. And that distraction is unbelievably healthy to just go through. It's one of the reasons why working out is so good for you. Like it helps release all of that in your body. So. Something I think about a lot. Now I'm almost throw it back to you and see what you get talking to other dads is you hear so much of you want to be a good role model for your kids. I think about that every day, and I'm sure you do too. And you want to see them. You want them to see you working out and working hard at your job and just your athletics or whatever, just being healthy. And neither my mother or father, none of them, I think they were athletes when they were kids and they talk about it, tell stories, but as adults, they didn't do anything athletic. They weren't in great shape. They, weren't world travelers. Me and my 3 brothers have all traveled the world. And so it's interesting how, for me, I'm just I want my kids to be travelers. I got to take them to some third world countries before they go on their own because I got to show them how to travel third world. I'm like,
like, I didn't do it. I did all that on my own. I didn't do anything with my family. They didn't even suggest it. Like my mother even said sometimes, like, I don't know what we did to make you guys want to travel the world. Like at one point, my mother had a map of the world. I gave her actually, I think for Mother's Day or something. And she put pins in all the countries that me and my brother would visit. And of course we'd come back at Christmas and have a competition who had the most pins, and everything's a competition with the brothers. But so like, it's funny how like what things rub off and don't rub off. And I think the big thing they gave us was just like no barriers and the opportunity to like, hey, you can do anything you want. And like, I always kind of grew up with that confidence and just knowing that like, there's no limits to what's out there, which is amazing, because so many people do grow up in sheltered environments that are probably not inspired or encouraged to go off and try new things.
Yeah, I grew up in fact, I want to say that I wasn't encouraged to not go out and try things, but I lived in such a, like both of my parents are in the military. I signed up for the Air Force when I was 16 years old because I didn't know any different. So I turned 16, I went and got my driver's license, and then I went to the recruiter. I was in delayed enlistment right up until the month after I graduated high school, and I was gone. And that's all I knew. So I lived in this world of, it was borderline like a single path lane. I didn't know any other way. I didn't know that college would have been an option. I was rather smart, but I didn't apply myself because I didn't care to. It was more fun for me to go do sports and play, and have friends and do that sort of thing than it was to study. And now I look back on it and like, man, I love learning so much. I wish I would have kept doing it. Like I missed 15 solid years of good learning, and I was like, what the heck happened? But I think it's one of those things that's, it's similar to when I tell people like when I'm having a conversation with you, Shawn, I'm not just having a conversation with Shawn. I'm having a conversation with Shawn and anybody else he's ever interacted with, because that's all affected who you are today. It's affected how you're viewing this conversation. It's affected how you're understanding what's coming in your ears. Like, did I say something that somebody else said before that was something similar that now you have a negative feeling to it that I have no idea what's associated to, right? So our parents did the same thing. They raised us based off of what they saw in their past, and we're raising our kids based off of what we saw, right? And so like we're trying to give our kids, and this I think is a rather large theme with a lot of the people I talk to, a lot of the dads I'm interviewing, is a majority of us did not have business-minded parents. A majority of us did not have growth-minded parents. A majority of us did not have, and not that any of them were bad, just didn't have what we're looking at. And they had a different thought process because, their parents grew up right after the Great Depression and they were going through all their stuff. So now, our grandparents had a different view that they put onto the world to our kids. And now we have this view of the world like, wow, like all of these opportunities are out there. And, like if I were to tell my dad some of the jobs that are out there that people are doing, he would probably be like, I'm sorry, people get paid to do what? Like, you mean to tell me there's a 35-year-old that gets paid to walk dogs? Are you kidding me? And they make a good living off of that? Yeah. Because when he was young, nobody would have done that. Your dog lived out in the backyard. That was it, So I think that we are at the benefit of the fact that we saw so many different things. And while we may not have had the life that we're giving our kids, we get to say, you know what? Every dad, I would hope, and I hope this is true, that every single dad wants a better life for their kids than they had. And sometimes that means we had to see some of the negative and feel some of the hurt to be able to pass on the greatness to our kids. And hopefully they're getting some hurt that they get to take away from their kids. Like I don't want to be passing any hurt on to my kids, but if that's a way that they get to see like where daddy fails, that they can become better in that to fill that gap better for their kids, then great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's so much of it's like just creating that environment of growth oriented and of possibility. The growth, the environment of self-confidence and possibility is like limitless. And I think that's where my parents came from. And, people said, oh, you must have been a huge camping family. Did you camp all over the place with your parents? I'm like, no, my dad hated camping. Like we camped once. I remember it. And it rained and the next night we were at a hotel,
Funny.
But they provided an opportunity for me to grow up in the Scouts, in the Boy Scouts and then Ventures. And I stayed in that for a long time, way after it was cool. And I still had my sports friends, but then I had my camping friends at Scouts because I knew I wasn't getting that outlet with my family. And so I did all kinds of great adventures with Scouts. And eventually, who knew that was going to be my career path? Yeah. But they provided that opportunity for me. A funny story, just thinking back to my grandfather. I remember telling him as a high school student, I would go out camping or go for hikes with friends. And we'd just go for a hike, take some pictures, get some exercise. We'd have a boil up, have a little campfire, boil up some beans or whatever. and I'd come back and he'd come over for Sunday dinner. I'd say, "Hey, Grandpa, how you doing? I had a great time out in the woods this weekend." And he would always say, "What did you get?" And I was like, what do you mean, what'd you get? And he's like, well, what were you doing out there? And he's like, what did you get? He's like, did you get a moose? Get some rabbit? Did you cut a cord of wood? Like, what were you doing out? Like the concept of like hiking for fitness, for pleasure, for recreation was just so foreign to him, because when he grew up in the Depression eras, it was like, yeah, the woods was something you utilized. You go out for cutting firewood, or you go out and you're going hunting. And like, I certainly didn't grow up in a hunting family. And so that wasn't even on the radar. And I was like, no, we were just going out, take some pictures and getting some fresh air.
Yeah. It's like, my dad always gave me a hard time. He's like, you're just going to go for a run? Like, just going to go run, like, like no other reason than to go run. Yeah. I'm just going to go for a run. I remember preparing for the military. I'd go out and run, and my dad was like, I was trying to find ways to spend some more time with him. And I was like, why don't you just ride your bike next to me, And then I'd he'd ride his bike, and it only happened a few times, but I specifically remember it because there wasn't very many of those moments with my dad. So, I'd go out for this run, and my dad's there on his bicycle, which I made fun of because it was a road bike with the thin tires and, the bent handlebars. And I was like, oh, you need a mountain bike. But now here I am as the dad with my carbon fiber road bike in there, and I could go out. And my son is probably like, what the heck? Actually, he looks at it the other way. He's like, why don't I have one of those? And I'm like, trust me, bud, you enjoy your mountain bike. But I mean, it's just such a different world. My dad was like, sure, I'll go out and follow you. And then, he's like, the only reason I ever ran was because the military told me I had to. And that was all he'd ever like. Other than that, I ain't doing it. But yeah, it's just such a different world that our parents grew up in than what they provided to us, and what a unbelievably different world that we're providing to our kids. That, and hopefully it'll continue on. So how did you end up transitioning from mountaineering and teaching people all of that to running a business that is showing people how to save money?
Yeah, well, there's a few more kind of career jumps, life jumps in the middle of there for sure. I
would imagine somebody doesn't hit a summit and then go, I want to start helping businesses save money. That's usually not how that goes. So
not tomorrow. Leading when you're working full time in that outdoor education industry, it's not that different than being a professional athlete, other than the paycheck. But you're reliant on your body, and you're you kind of age out of that industry. There's some people that have hung on and have worked in the industry till their 60s, but they probably don't have a family and kids and all that stuff. And I knew at some point I would get burnt out and want to settle down. I think for 9 years I didn't live in one place for more than 3 months. Essentially, living where I worked, driving to Alaska 3 times, twice from Mexico. And so the constant travel, which was awesome at the time, but I knew eventually I'm going to want to settle down and have a significant relationship and, be able to have a closet instead of a storage unit and build a community. And so kind of in my early 30s, I was kind of going into that transition. And so I was slowly not working as many courses. And I think I was working at some gear stores, kind of where I was trying to figure out my transition. I was based in Vancouver at the time, British Columbia. And I think I did a small business course to write a business plan, and kind of my entrepreneurial juices were spinning of like, hey, what's my next move? What can I do next? And I had a few kind of not stumbles, but I tried to start a adventure travel company for high school students, doing high school trips to developing countries, to India, Ecuador, Newfoundland, places where I had connections I'd been before, and utilizing a lot of my Knowles friends that had companies in these countries as well. And that was around 2007, 2008, 2009, right around that economic crisis going on there. And I found insurance being really challenging. You go to an insurance company and they're like, tell me about your business. It's like, well, it's high school students, third world travel, volunteering. And they're like, maybe someone down the street will help you. Like, I don't want to touch that. And so I did bring a couple trips to a couple school groups to Newfoundland and that. And then pretty quick, I realized that, if I'm burnt out of this industry, I kind of pictured like, I'm going to start this business. I'm going to hire all these instructors and they're all going to go lead all the expeditions and I'm going to run the office. And then I'm like, well, hold on now. Like for the first few years, people are going to come on these trips because I'm doing the trip, because that's the only common denominator. They know of me or know of my history. And if I say, no, I'm not going on these trips, and they're like, well, that's why we're coming. So I knew I was going to be leading the trips. I'm like, hold on, is this really what I want to be doing? If I'm, if I want to start stabilizing and looking at relationships and working on relationships, things like that. And so, I kind of, at the same time I was doing that, I'd also kind of discovered professional speaking, this whole career of professional speaking and keynote speaking. And a friend of mine had been doing it for years and kind of inspirational speaking. And I touched base with him. And the time I touched base, he's like, oh, there's a conference in Vancouver in a couple of weeks. You should come on out. And so I attended it's in Canada, it's called the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. It's CAPS. They have a sister organization in the US called NSA, National Speakers Association, but they had their annual conference in Vancouver, and I checked it out, and that was another kind of light bulb moment, blown away of like, wow, these people, get paid really good money to be on stage and tell some stories and make some points and inspire and motivate people. And it's like, wow, it's easier when you go to these things and you stand in the audience to critique the speakers, and you're like, I've got better stories than these guys. Like, a lot of these stories are about airplanes and like air travel. I'm like, really, like, I got a few more stories than them. It's a lot easier, like I say, sitting in the audience than I now realize years later, as these professional speakers, like, maybe their stories weren't the best, but they were really good speakers and just really good at their craft and honed their craft. And at the time I was like, I was comfortable with public speaking and teaching in that, but never really connected the dots of like, okay, there's winging it comfortable, and then there's like professional. And so I decided to go down that road for a little bit, and built a leadership consulting company. And so I was doing some keynote speaking, utilizing my leadership skills and experience from my expeditions. And then at the time, I'd also did a master's in leadership from Royal Roads University on Vancouver Island. And so combining kind of the theory of the master's in leadership with my practical experience. Around that time, I wrote a book as well. It's called Teams on the Edge. And that was a lot of it. I wanted to get stories on paper for someday my kids could have it. But also in the speaking industry, it's pretty important to have a book, and it shows your credibility and commitment to that industry and your expertise for me, it was leadership and team building. I was fortunate enough to do a TED Talk around that time. I utilized a story of one of my expeditions in India where I had a student had an open fracture and just kind of talked about the team aspect of managing that kind of crisis in the situation. And so, that leadership consulting career went on for like 6 or 7 years, and it was sporadic work here and there, but was building every year, was getting better, and really enjoyed it. Around that time, I moved back to Newfoundland, decided Vancouver's kind of an expensive place to hang out as you're growing a small business if you don't need to be in Vancouver. And thought I'd go back to Newfoundland, try to be a bit of a bigger fish in a smaller sea, and see how that goes. Fortunately, the 2 months after I moved there, I met my wife. At the time, she was just moved there. She was doing her residency. She's from Calgary, where we're currently living, but she'd moved to Newfoundland to do a residency at the medical school there. And we met actually training for an Ironman triathlon. Ended up being in a similar group, and someone had mentioned that there was a new kind of swimmer. She has a background in elite swimming and triathlete in town. And so I asked her to go out for a bike ride, met her. Rest is history. Yeah. And then we started traveling a little bit for her. After a few years in Newfoundland, she finished that. She had to do more training in Calgary, training in England, and then we eventually moved to Ottawa. And through all that moves, I had to kind of slow down the consulting because it's hard to keep up when you're moving that much. And we started having kids. And so I started almost taking the primary care parent role, almost the at-home dad role with the kids. And then kind of officially taking that role when we ended up in Ottawa in 2017. And so 2017, we moved to Ottawa. We established there. She started her career there as a practicing surgeon, and I was really excited to start the business, get it back up and running again, the consulting business, and realized pretty quick with 3 young girls and a wife with a massive career and massive commitments that what are we doing here trying to put a 3-month-old in daycare? Maybe I should stay back for a little bit until we get things sorted out. Did that for a while. About 3 weeks after being an at-home dad, I decided to start a nonprofit film festival because I just needed to have my brain going, and I needed something outside of I'm always chasing a new goal and a new, striving for something. And I loved being home, and I was really fortunate to have that opportunity, but I felt like I still needed something. And so started the International Vegan Film Festival and grow that. It's still running today. I've actually just stepped down from the board this year, but it's still running in good hands. And from there, the next 6 or 7 years, I was, that primary care parent, had different side projects and side hustles going, but for the most part was, dropping the kids off, picking the kids up, driving them everywhere, running the house, all that stuff that takes place to run a family. And, about a year and a half ago, my wife and I chatted and thought, like, the kids are old and getting older now. And the youngest was 7 at the time, and thought maybe it's time to get back in the workforce full time. And being an entrepreneur, I was not interested in just applying for a job.
Yeah, no kidding.
I was like, okay, that's great, but I'm not going to get a job anywhere. Like, that's not where my brain goes. My brain goes to, like, okay, I want to either start a new business or buy a business. And I didn't have an idea topic that was super passionate about. I decided to, like, step away from the leadership stuff for continuing for a while. Like, that stuff will always be there and I can always jump back into it. But decided to look down the road of buying a business and seeing what was out there. And did a bunch of research and never thought about franchising until I went to a GoBundance conference, AES, a couple of years ago, and heard a speaker, Brian Beers, talk about franchising. And then that kind of led me down the path to finding Schooley Mitchell. And I took a deep dive on 3 or 4 other franchises to learn about them and talk to franchisees. But then, landed on Schooley Mitchell and decided, like, the topic was great, the skills and experience needed to run that business, and then, fitting my lifestyle and the family lifestyle, it all kind of checked the boxes. And I took the deep dive kind of a year and a half ago, and I haven't looked back.
That's super cool. Yeah,
that's long story long.
No problem. That's why I do a long podcast, so we could tell those long stories long. The stay at home dad part of what you were talking about in there. What was I've been there. I understand it. I got a lot of itches while I was there. It's like, man, oh man, I feel like I've got moss growing on this stone. I need to get it rolling again, Like, what was it like for you mentally as you were kind of working through that? Like, you knew that your wife had a very strong, promising career. She's doing really well. So this is the role that you needed to take right now. Was that difficult for you kind of going through that, to kind of go, man, oh man, like I feel like I'm, going back to, being more like your mom. Your mom had that license plate thing where, the kid's taxi driver. Did you have some moments like that where you're going, what the heck am I doing? Like, how did you kind of think through things like that?
Oh yeah. We could spend 2 hours or 2 days just talking about that roller coaster of emotions of being the at-home parent that especially as a dad. There's a group on Facebook called Dads Married to Doctors. And that group was like my support network throughout those years, because especially the early years when I'm just trying to figure it out and, other people going through it. And I remember several times where I was like, I don't know what I was doing. I was like vacuuming at 2 PM. And I was just like, I almost had a little mini breakdown. I'm like, what am I doing vacuuming at 2 PM? I should be working. I should be providing an income for the family. Like, what am I doing here? So you kind of always got that little, devil on your shoulder saying, like, you're not enough or you need to be providing more. Because, historically we just look at the finances and we don't look at like, oh, well, what would it cost to replace everything I'm doing for the family? That's somebody else. We're just like, I'm a guy, I'm in my mid 40s and I'm vacuuming at 2 PM. Like, what am I doing? I've had those times, you have times where you go to all the play groups with your kids and like, you're definitely the only dad there and everybody's giving you some looks, you go to the playground and like, you're getting the looks. I've had all those experiences. And then, like the school calling and asking for mom, it's like, no, don't bother to call her. Like, you need to put me as your primary contact. Cause like, she's not going to know or she's not gonna be available. Those things. It plays with your head. And like, even in this DMD, the Dads Married to Doctors group, we talk about like, for most of our spouses, like they spent, most of them, from early in their life wanted this goal of becoming a doctor. And that's what they've been driven, hard focused and are, working really hard to get there and have got there and achieved it. And it might not be all roses for them, but they're on a track that they planned and they're going and they've done it. There wasn't one person in that DMD group of 500 guys that planned this trajectory.
Yeah, for sure.
There's not many guys in high school are like, I just want to have kids and be at home with the kids. Yeah. And so we've all ended up in that way for some way or another. And so knowing that, it's kind of like, you got to remind yourself of the gratitude. Like, there's so many people that would be in this position that you can have this early years with your kids and keep reminding yourself of that. Cause it's human nature to look at the other side and be like, I should be doing. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I mean, I was a guy that was, running around the mountains of Afghanistan, blowing doors off hinges with a bomb dog, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And then I find myself doing that same thing at 2:00 in the afternoon, vacuuming a floor. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is not, but I had to, having conversations like this and having this podcast actually helped a lot. I mean, there'd be times I'd get done with the podcast and then I'd walk outside, finish make lunch for the kids, make sure that the littlest one's down for a nap, vacuum real quick, make sure the kids have done the dishwasher. And then it's like, what in the world is going on? But I think to myself, this is an unbelievable moment in time that I get to have with my kids that I'll never get back, that I'll never get to see again. It's only happening because of the timing of my wife's career and my career. And before I know it, she's going to be done with hers, and I'm going to be able to go full steam ahead a little bit more on some of the business stuff. And I'm going to be wishing that I was vacuuming the floor again and making my kids lunch. So can I just take a step back and realize it's okay? This is a stage in life that you should enjoy. And I'm saying all that knowing very full well that I did not do that very well many times. Like, I would get very frustrated. My wife would get home from work and I was like, I got to go outside and do something. And I'd go outside, just chop wood. We almost never have fires, but I'd be outside chopping wood because I needed to do something physical. I don't run very much anymore because of my broken back and bad knees. I don't do a whole lot of weight lift anymore because of the same thing. So I had to do something. It's like, I just I don't know what I need to do, but I need to go do something. And it's not sitting in the house right now.
There was a time where we used to, there was a YMCA nearby where we were living when one of the kids was young, and they had a daycare there. You could drop off your kid while you worked out. And we utilized that a lot. Like, they didn't make any money off us. We were there so much. But at one point, I think someone in the daycare asked what our parents did. And I think a 3-year-old, my oldest daughter, 3 years old at the time, was like, "Oh, mommy helps people." And what does your dad do? "Oh, daddy exercises." That's what because that's all, like, we were just going out, and I ran so many miles in the chariot, the jogger, with these kids. Like, I always said, I'm never going to get a double chariot because they're just too big and unruly. And then we had 2 kids, and I was like, well, I could get a double chariot or I could not run. Okay, I guess I'm getting a double. And I got a double. And then, then we got the 3rd kid, and 4 years later, and we got rid of the double, got back to a single. So I've had 3 of them over the time. There's one time I actually wore out. There was like, I wore out the tires. I'm like, who wears out the tires of a jogging stroller? Like,
no kidding.
Most people, they sit in the garage and they, whatever, their coat rack or, put so many miles on it that we actually wore out the tires. And a lot of that was for my mental health of like, all right, nap time, let's go. Like, how am I going to fit in my training? Well, I got to fit it around you, and we're going to do it together.
And that's what you have to do, and now like my boys, they've got this like pull-up competition that they're doing, speaking of getting back. And so like, they're telling me, "Hey, Dad, you need to go back to working out again." Because, they know that I used to be in really good shape. And it's one of those things that, you were talking about your parents, like they had stories about, when they were, doing sports and stuff.
Back in the day. I
think to myself, I have stories about when I was in shape and I could run really fast and I could do a lot of things, but I don't know. So, they pulled out their pull-up bar, and I was like, well, I can still do pull-ups. So I'll do some pull-ups, So it's just fun to watch the kids kind of how they pull things in together. So I would imagine that your daughters watching you work out like crazy, are they fitness freaks as well?
Yeah. I didn't mention that my wife was an Olympian swimmer.
Oh, well, there you go.
So, I now have 3 swimmers. We have about 16 swim practices a week that are actually starting this week. Last year we had 6 morning practices. So we were up at 4:30, 6 days a week, driving to the pool. And, some parents are like, "Oh, I like the morning practice. That way you don't have to deal with afternoon traffic." I'm like, "Oh no, I have swimmers in the afternoon as well."
You're stuck regardless.
So I'm doing most of those drives. They're also cross-country skiers, Nordic skiing. They race in that as well. And so there's another 7 practices on that. That started now before the snow. They do dry land training.
Those aren't short practices either. Jeez.
All the swimming, they're all 1.5 hours, 2 hours. But the nice thing about the swimming and skiing that I like when I talk to like hockey parents or basketball parents is that we don't have games. And so the schedule's the same until March or April. I have a hard time, like the hockey parents or baseball or basketball, like where you got games and you don't week to week, you don't know when the game is or where it is. And so that's one benefit. And the swimming, it's a controlled environment. I know the temperature is going to be nice and warm in the pool the whole time. I'm not in a cold hockey rink, so there are some benefits to being a swim parent. But those early mornings, the swimmers, they really enjoy their early mornings.
For sure. Yeah.
But it's awesome. Like we spent most of the summer, out in the mountains here, hiking and backpacking and camping. And, they've done a lot more than kind of their average friends in their school, I would say, at this stage in terms of athletics and travel and seeing things. And there's like my oldest two now are, 14 and 12. And so they're at a fun age where they can actually do stuff with me now. And they are faster swimmers than me and almost faster than my wife. And so it's like I felt forever I was waiting for that age where I could do stuff that I wanted to, that I enjoyed with my kids. Like, I think, I don't know, moms enjoy kind of the baby years even a bit more than dads, because I'm just kind of like, you're just there. Like, come on. I want to do something with you and I can't do anything with you. And like, I'm not really, like I had 3 girls and like, I'm not really into arts and crafts, like, they would have been happy to do crafts all day long half the time. And I'm like, I don't know. I bought this box of crafts. Like here, like, I don't know what to do. Just do that if that's what you want. But like, can we go throw the ball? Like,
yeah. No kidding. Yeah.
So,
I think that,
that's been an adjustment. Obviously 3 girls growing up with 3 boys myself.
Yeah, before we started recording, I think you said you reminded me that you had 3 daughters, and I was like, "Oh, God bless you!" Like, I've got just the one, and she's chasing the 2 older brothers around. But thankfully, I get to wrestle with the boys and all the stuff, and I don't know what I would do if I always tell people, like, my wife rides motorcycles and shoots guns. If we had a really girly girl, we would be, neither one of us would know what to do. We'd both be like she doesn't wear makeup, she rides motorcycles, she shoots guns, she loves being outdoors. I took her on a date to go skydiving. Like, that's the kind of woman she is. And that if we have a real girly girl, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So I couldn't imagine being in your shoes with 3 girls that want to do crafts and all the stuff. My daughter now, like, she runs around with a baby doll all the time, and she's like, "Oh, baby," and I'm like,
sure.
I don't know what to do with this. We'll see,
Yeah, I remember when we went to Disney because my wife had a conference there, and my youngest, I only had one child at the time. She was 3 months old, and we just went to Disney because it was next door, and she hadn't been there before. I'd been there earlier, and we see all these kids going around in their princess costumes, because you go to Disney with your princess costume, I guess, when you're that age.
Of course.
And we were just like shaking our heads. We're like, never, like, our kids are never doing this. Like, they're not going to be in princess costumes. It's crazy. And sure enough, like, when my oldest daughter turned 3, it was like all she wanted was princess costumes. And like, we had a whole tickle trunk of princess costumes, and it was princess everywhere. And we were like, all right, go with the flow.
That's funny. Yeah. You said a word there that I have never heard. Tickle trunk? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is a tickle trunk?
I think it must be
a Canadian thing.
Show.
I don't know.
Yeah, it must be from a kid's Canadian show. I think it's from like Mr. Dress Up or Mr. Rogers or something. You would know Mr. Rogers, but
I know Mr. Rogers. Yeah,
it's basically like a trunk that all your kids' toys and costumes go into.
Interesting. All right. Interesting.
Tickle trunk. I don't know where. I'll have to ChatGPT that and see where it came from.
Now I'm gonna be wondering by the time the entire rest of the time we're having this conversation, I'm gonna be thinking about tickle trunks, and that just does not sound good. So
no, it's generally like a kid's toy place, a trunk just to like shove all your kids' toys.
Okay, we call that a toy box. So
yeah, same thing.
Daggum Canadians, I tell you what.
Yeah,
but. I don't remember where I was going now. Tickle trunks have lost my
3 girls,
lost my concentration. Yeah. So I mean, with the 3 girls and watching them kind of grow up, do you look back and especially the time you had to spend there, did you catch yourself at all looking back saying, well, I'm definitely going to do this because I didn't have that when I was a kid, or I'm definitely going to do this because I loved that as a kid? Like, how have you kind of applied your past with your relationship with your dad and your understanding of growing up to how you want to be a dad now?
Yeah. I see a lot of that in terms of like traveling with them and getting them outdoors to the mountains, because that's a passion for me and a passionate place for me. And I forget because, we've just moved to Calgary, which is close to the mountains, but they grew up in Ottawa, and there's great forest and hiking areas there, but it's not the Rocky Mountains. And I'm so excited to come to Calgary, and I'm so excited to be in the mountains. Like, it's my happy place being out there. And I just assume everybody feels the same way. And there's like my 12-year-old daughter, the summers we're like going to some of these incredible places outside of Banff National Park and that, which is like 90 minutes from our house. And they can't get over, like, people come from all over the world to Banff. Yeah. And it's just like, they've been to Banff a dozen times. And my 12-year-old's like, why do people like the mountains so much, Dad? Like, what is it? Like she was genuinely asking. I was like, I don't know how to answer that. Like, look at them. It's incredible. They're beautiful. Like the snow-capped mountains, the glaciers, a challenge. Just go climb. I was like, I think she's kind of getting it now, but I keep forgetting that they don't have the same passion of mountains as I do because they haven't like grown up in it. And so I'm happy that I get to take them there. Like I remember the first time I got to go to the Rockies, I was 16 years old. My dad took me out here. It was like a 16th birthday gift. And I'll never forget it. Like from that day, when I was 16 years old to now, like it hasn't left me. And, our vacations were a bit driving around a bit of Newfoundland and a couple trips to Florida sitting on the beach. And the kids have had very different vacations than that, And so I try to give them vacations that I want to do or that I like and that I think will expose them to new and exciting things. And last year I did a 8,000-mile road trip across Canada with the 3 girls, and my wife flew and met us.
Nice.
And so, I think providing those situations, maybe being a bit more involved in their athletics. Like, my parents always kind of paid for stuff and got me there, but like that was pretty much the interest as far as it went. Like never asked about the game, never gave advice, never, went anywhere with that. Which is probably some good parts too, because you always hear of those parents that are overbearing on the athletic side and ruin it for people. So they certainly didn't do that. I was like, could you guys be a bit more involved here? But at the end of the day, they got me there and they paid the fees, and that's that's the bottom line that allowed the exposure. And so obviously you want to provide that support for the kids, but I want to open them up. I want to travel the world with them. They don't necessarily need to travel the world with me. I'm sure they'll do it on their own, or maybe they won't be travelers. Who cares? But I feel like I kind of like we got to go. I want to take you to India. I want to go to Nepal.
Yeah.
I want to go all these places I've been, and want to show them that. But that certainly wasn't a part of my childhood. Like,
I think that the desire to open up the aperture can never be like, don't ever squash that, right? Open up the aperture as wide as you can. Some of the things that we open them up to, our kids are going to hate. Some of the things we open them up to, that's going to open a passion that we never knew that they could have, and they never knew they could have. So it's one of those, like, have as much of the travels as you can, have as much of the movement. It's like, just do it all. If it's a miserable trip, then it's a miserable trip. But the whole point, the point wasn't to make sure that this is the most amazing thing we've ever done. The point was to show them something that they would not have seen had you not had that experience. So, success, right? And even if it's a miserable time, if you understand the purpose was not to have the most amazing time, but to expose them to something different, then it was a success, And that's not always easy to do in the moment, especially when things are going haywire and like you had your second flat tire on the 8,000 mile road trip, and the hotel is overbooked, and you had to cancel your reservation and all the stuff. So,
I had one of the trips this summer, I had the 2 oldest girls and me, and I wanted to get them on a challenging mountain, a climb, a scramble, somewhere with a bit of exposure, some loose scree and loose rock, and that was going to probably scare them a little bit and challenge them, but totally in my realm and in their realm that I would know they would be fine. It was more almost the perceived risk than the actual. And we got probably 100 meters from the summit after like 6 or 7 hours of climbing. And I could tell that they were getting pretty close to their limit. And, I was in my head, I'm just like, you don't want to go to the summit. You never want to turn around. But I'm like, I was internalizing, like, what am I doing this for? Like, should we keep going? Should I ask them to turn around? Like, they seem kind of at their limit now. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just throw it out there and see, because maybe they got summit fever. Maybe they want to keep pushing. And we did hear some thunderstorms in the distance. So I'm like, maybe I want to think about turn around. And I was like, do you girls, like, do you think we should, have a bagel here and then turn around? They're like, and like in unison, both of them, like, very enthusiastically were like, yes. I was like, all right, that's enough said, I've pushed you far enough, and so when I came off that mountain, I was kind of like, these girls, like, I'm glad they've had these experiences. They're like, well, why are we doing this? You know why we do these things? I said to one of them, I was like, because the Strattons do hard things. And the 12-year-old, I was hoping to be like, yeah, Dad, we do hard things. Like, this is really tough. And she's like, Dad, that is so cringe. I was like, all right. Wrong angle. But I think they appreciate it. But at the end of the day, I don't want them to be doing things because I'm excited. Like, I don't want them to climb this mountain and feel like they're unsafe because Dad likes to climb mountains. I want them to I want there to be some stress and some challenge in there, but I also want some enjoyment in there. And so when I came off that, I think, going forward, there's always the push pull of like, how much do we okay, we're doing this, to like, hey, do you guys want to do this with me? So I'm finding that balance now.
Yeah. I would imagine that's a hard balance to find too, with how your personal trajectory has changed so much with being nothing but all the adventure and then turning into a stay-at-home dad and now having the ability to take the adventure with them. Like part of you wants to go back to what you used to be able to do all the time and expose them to that. But the other part of you has to be like, okay, well, I'm still a dad trying to raise these 3 girls in a way that makes sense to where they're at. And like, there's a lot of push-pull, I would imagine, internally, let alone externally with the girls themselves.
Yeah. I had a really neat opportunity this summer, and I'll ask you, like, are there things that you did as a kid that you want to repeat your kids to do? Like my kids went back and for the first time ever, they went to a sleepaway camp that I used to work at this summer. I spent 2 years there. It was monumental in my starting of my outdoor education career. I had a great experience there, I have great memories. And so I was really excited when we could manage to get them into this camp. And again, it's just like, am I throwing them at this camp because of me? And like, I was like holding my breath for the 2 weeks that they're gone. Just like, I hope they're having a good time. Like if they come back and it was miserable, my wife is going to hate me.
Yeah.
And I'm just praying they're having a good time. And that was a different experience because I'm like, do they want to do it or do I want to do it? And have you have situations like that where you're like, that was a big part of my childhood I want my kids to have?
So for me, one of the biggest things is for them to be able to go outside and just explore, like go.
Yeah.
My wife never got to experience that. That's almost my entire childhood was just being able to leave whenever I wanted to. Like I'm done with school, I'm out. Like I'm leaving, I'm riding my bike for dozens of miles somewhere. And I'll be back sometime around dinner, maybe.
Right.
And like even I was telling this one of our friends, their daughter who is in kindergarten, just went into kindergarten. She's all excited, and her older sister is in 2nd grade, and they were talking about something, and she immigrated from Nigeria. The mom did, and talking about how she had to walk to school, and the kids were like, one of the oldest girl is in 6th grade, and she's like, oh, I got to walk all the way to the Wawa to get picked up by you. I don't know if I want to walk to Wawa, and she was like, come on, I grew up in Nigeria and had to walk all this way to blah blah blah, and I looked at the kindergarten. I said, I used to walk to school when I was your age. And she's like, what? I'm in kindergarten. I said, yes, when I was your age, I used to walk to school with my friend Molly. I used to hold her hand and she and I would walk to school in kindergarten all the way there. And I think to myself, man, like what a blessing it was to even at a young age be able to just explore and be gone. We'd go to the park and we'd go to, the woods, and I'd be, dressed up in my dad's old camouflage with a BB gun, and I'd be, shooting things throughout the woods and climbing all over the place in upstate New York. And I really want that for my kids, but it's so much more difficult, or at least it feels like it is. I mean, I'm in a slightly larger city, which makes it feel that way. But also, my wife never experienced that at all. So now there's the push and pull between how we both grew up and the things that we want for our kids. Yes. And it's like I really want that to be able to just go and explore. And when I yell your name, you come back. Right. Hopefully you're close enough to hear me. If not, then I guess you'll come back when you are close enough to hear me. But that freaks my wife out. But for me, that's what I lived, Right. So that's something that I really want. And I remember we never got to go on vacations. So the only vacations we ever had were when my dad got assigned to a different military base. We would take the road trip to the new military base. Okay. So we would stop at a hotel that the government would pay for, right. And that was the time we got to stay in a hotel that was nice. And there's like one trip in particular I remember. I think it was like a Radisson hotel or something, but this thing had a mini putt inside. There's like a little mini rainforest. Wow. There was a toucan. I was like, this is what I want. So those are the types of things that I try to recreate for my kids. And I do the same thing though. I'm like, am I recreating this because I want to relive it, or am I recreating it because this is what my kids want? And then thankfully they're always like, like we'll ask them, do you want presents for Christmas or do you want to go on an adventure? And they almost always want an adventure. So it's like, no, they actually want this. They like this. So I'll keep that going. Thank God they like it because I really want it,
Right. Yeah. And then there's the flip side of that of like, last Christmas, my mother put together a family trip to Cancun, and she wanted all the family, my brother and all our families together at a resort for a week in December. And, it probably wouldn't have been the trip that I'd planned, but it was a family trip to a beautiful resort and all inclusive in Cancun. And the kids, within 3 days, they're like running the place. I'm like, these kids have no idea. Like, man, I got to take these kids to some third world and see how other people live. They just think like they're upset because there's not enough ice in their Shirley Temple or, whatever. I'm just like, oh. But at the same time, we had a great, it was a good time in the resort. And so it's just balancing that yin and yang of like, you want them to have a better life than you, but you also want them to have that gratitude and it's hard for kids to absorb gratitude when they haven't seen the way other people live sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I try to tell stories constantly with especially my two older boys, about all the terrible places that I've been in the world and how unbelievably blessed they are, to live in a country that we do, and to have the freedoms that we have, and to be able to go on that random cruise in December that nobody else, none of your friends are going on, to be able to take that road trip from here all the way to the Rockies out in Colorado and go see some things. And like, there's a lot of people that don't get that opportunity, so it's a blessing to be able to have had some of the terrible experiences in life to be able to share with them, so that they can learn the wisdom, then and earn it, but learn the wisdom from somebody who's been through it, so that they don't have to. But man, I really do want to go on more missions trips, like with my church or something like that, with my kids, and be like, hey, this is what the world is, right? Like it's not the world you live in, but this is what the world is, and it's pretty horrendous out there. So
like we're 1%ers.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when you look at the world, for sure, we are 1%ers. Like it's a whole different beast out there than people really want to think about. So
and all they're complaining is that their friends have nicer cars or nicer houses, or you're like, are you kidding me? But it's their realm. I'm interested. What are your thoughts on your kids if they wanted to go in the military? I'm sure you've thought about that.
Boy, I have. So I struggled with it, and I still kind of do, right? I look back at a lot of the things I've done, and I think to myself, okay, what was it all for? I kind of ponder, I spent 8 months, almost 8 months out in Iraq in Baghdad with the Army doing, finding bombs with my dog, and then go to Afghanistan and do the same thing, jumping out of helicopters, doing crazy things with the Army out there. And then just to watch these countries kind of fall apart because of mismanagement and lack of leadership. And that bothers me a lot, to think about all the sacrifices that were made from folks out there, and for us to kind of give that up. And I saw a lot of things that have nothing to do with winning wars and fighting wars and being the most dominant military force that this world has ever seen, which is what every military should be striving to be. That was becoming like back burner, like, oh, it's okay if we don't do these things that are going to make us the best fighting military force in the world. I'm like, no, like there's no such thing as a thing that should go in front of that. But we started putting all sorts of other priorities in there, which made it very difficult toward the end of my career. So had you asked me then, I would have said probably, absolutely not. I'm going to do everything I can. But if we start to move more towards like the honor side of the military, then I would be, I'm not sure that I would be super stoked to have them go do it, because I know what that world is like. But at the same point, if they're called to serve and that's where they want to go, then I want them to know that my whole goal is for them to know that they have 100 options, not just one. I understood only one option that I had. Not that that was the only option I had. That's all in my brain, my limited understanding of the world. That's all I understood to do. So I just want them to know that they have 100 options. If that's the one they choose, then go for it. And it wasn't until years in the military, I'm hearing people that went to Ivy League schools that are officers in the military, and I'm like, what? Like, why did you go to an Ivy League school to come in the military? Like, for me, it was like, I grew up rather, maybe upper lower class, not quite lower middle class, but upper lower class. And I'm like, I don't understand why you would do that. And to me, it was because they knew that they had other options, but this is where they wanted to go, and this is what they wanted to do. And I was like, well, I appreciate that. And for now, right? And they're some of them, one of my buddies who went to Cornell, and then he decided he was done after, I think, 6 or 7 years, and he went off and did more things. He's working in the government, stayed in the reserves, and still is doing a different thing in his world now. And it's like, I want my kids to know that there are so many options out there, and I don't want my bad taste in my mouth to be passed on to my kids. I want them to know that there is some amazing opportunities in the military. There really is. So there's to go back to what you said earlier, a long answer. But I can talk about that for 2 days myself.
I'm sure. Yeah. It touches home, especially with both. Like the chances of one of your kids going in the military with two parents with military backgrounds is probably pretty high.
Exactly. Yeah. And they've already kind of, one of them has talked about, either law enforcement or pilot. And I'm like, okay, well, it just so happens your dad did both of those. So that I have a feeling that might be why you decided those two options. But I'm going to do everything I can to expose you to as much as you can. It's like, if you're interested in it, I want to expose you to it. So you could find out what you actually enjoy and then go and chase it. And not just do something that you feel like you had to do. So we'll see how it all goes. There's a long time between now and the time they would join. So I've got some extra influence time. So we'll see how it goes.
For sure. Yeah. I'm sure they'll watch a lot of movies between now and then too.
One or two movies, and I'll have a few more stories for them. I've got all sorts of things that I've got up my sleeve. So, it's a fun time. But as your kids are kind of growing up, obviously you talked about all three of them. Are all three of them swimmers? Is that what you were saying, right?
They are right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
As you kind of see them growing up and doing all of that, what kind of conversations are you having now about their future? What kind of, obviously it's going to be different from the youngest to the oldest, but what sort of conversations do you have? How do you see them kind of shaping their world in front of them based off of what you've given them thus far?
Yeah, it's tough. Like, there's all those hard conversations you feel like you hear on podcasts and books that you should probably have with your preteens and teens. It's just like, there's a reason they're hard conversations, and some of those are birds and bees type stuff. And some of those are, like deep career stuff. And I don't like the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I love the quote that says, adults ask kindergartens or adults ask children what they want to be when they grow up because they're looking for ideas.
I like it.
And I never want like a kid to be pigeonholed, of like people asking them and they feel like they need to have an answer. And so, in terms of conversations about like, I try not to talk too much in the future, but, I really try to not preach, but I really push home attitude and gratitude. Attitude and gratitude is a pretty simple things. We got in the habit of pretty regularly, we have as many family meals as we can. Obviously, with these schedules, sometimes it's your dinner's in the oven or the microwave or whatever, because people are coming and going, and sometimes it's like a Greyhound bus terminal here. But 3 or 4 times a week when we have family dinners, I usually ask them the 3 questions of we'll get what's your rose for the day, what's your thorn, and what's your bud. So the rose is 2 things that are great that have happened today. The thorn is one thing that wasn't so great, and your bud is something you're looking forward to. And so we've gotten into the routine of doing that, and I think that's a great way to get kids talking. Because so many times, how was your day? Good. What'd you do? Not much. Did you learn anything? No. And that's like the majority of conversations with teens and preteens, with parents. But then you ask those kind of open-ended questions like, oh, tell me 2 good things happened today. Well, that's 2 stories you're going to get. What are you looking forward to? Well, you stole mine. I'm looking forward to this too. And so they're optimistic. And so I heard that by someone on a podcast, and I've liked those things. It's just really simple. I don't have to explain what they mean. They get it. And it's not threatening. They don't have to be competing against each other because they like that. It's just like, let's tell everybody today. They do compete about talking over each other. It's like, my turn. It's like, they always find something to compete over. But so that just opens up dialogue and discussions. But in terms of like kind of hard topics and future and that, I try not to dive too much into it because I don't want them to like not ruin their childhood stressing about the future, but I want them to be in the presence and really soak in what they're doing now. Like, sure, we talk about their sports, and one of the ski teams that they're on really has a big motto of like, let the coaches coach. Let the parents parent and let the coaches coach. And so in terms of athletics, I really try to, focus on the parent side and don't really talk about them after their swims or their ski races, and just like give them a hug and say, that was amazing. Really enjoyed watching you. That's one thing I've heard. Like, just tell them how much you enjoy. I enjoyed watching you. I enjoyed spending time with you. That we try to do kind of one-on-one trips as much as we can. I think we've kind of come up to a tradition now at 12 years old. The kids get to pick a location to go with their mom on a one-on-one trip for a week. So one went to Mexico, one now is going to go to Hawaii this year. And so we kind of give them a realm of where they can go in a budget. And so those are really important. I think maybe at 15 or 16, I'll probably do some kind of similar trip like that. So that's kind of where they're at. I try to meet them where they're at. I've heard people say, experts say you shouldn't tell kids you're proud of them, because then they feel the pressure of trying to impress you and make you proud all the time. And so I struggle with that because I want to tell them I'm proud of them. But, I think just telling them that you really enjoy, you're impressed with their hard work and their effort and that you enjoy spending time with them, I think is good. So those are things I balance with, but I'm always learning too.
It's funny. I listen to some of those things and I hear that and I'm thinking to myself, there was a long time where I was like, oh yeah, absolutely right. I should adjust how I say the things and what I say. And then I think to myself, man, what would I actually want to hear though? If I was sitting there, I'd want to hear that my dad was proud of me, like,
that's true.
And if I was sitting there, I'd be like, man, you mentioned earlier, like, you didn't remember your dad ever saying, I love you. You knew that he did. But would you have wanted to hear it when you were younger? Probably, so I tell my kid every day, like nonstop, my kids hear that I know, Dad, I love you too, and it's like, I don't care. Like if that's the feeling you have when I say, I don't care, because at least you know it, you feel it, you hear it. And so, I've tossed around all those things that I keep hearing people say, and it's, how to praise differently. And, the things that you praise the effort, not necessarily the outcome.
Right.
And some of it, I'm like, I totally get that. I want to praise the effort, because sometimes you do your absolute best and lose. So that's okay. Did you do your absolute best? And sometimes I look at the effort and go, that's not worth praising. I'm like, all right. I've got nothing for you to like, you may have won, but it doesn't mean that I'm proud of like how hard you worked, because I can tell you didn't, So it's, I try to look at it from scenario to scenario. What is it that's needed in this moment? And not very good. I haven't, become an expert on that yet. I'm still kind of working through that, because you do hear all this advice, and everybody's got 10 cents in their pocket to be able to give you their 5 times their 2 cents over to you. And I'm like, I don't need your 2 cents, let alone your 10 cents. Like, let me figure out how to be the dad for my kids, because every kid is going to be different anyways, Yeah.
So. No, I love that. Praise the effort, not the outcome. And that comes up a lot in sports, because they get friends. Their friends are like, oh yeah, like they get $50 if they get placings in a swim meet, or if they get so many marks, they're getting a car, or they're getting whatever money for all this. And I'm like, that's not really teaching growth oriented mindset, is it? If you're like paying them to get marks or paying them to do well. And then like my daughters are like, well, my oldest is just such a caring, loving person that she's like comforting these kids that are just distraught after not having a good result in their swim meet, because now they're not going to get that iPhone. Their parents, like they'll do this. And they've never come to me and said, Dad, can I get, because I think they see it, the realm. And some of these, obviously we're all raised differently. And I think some of the kids on our swim team have immigrant parents that have probably obviously very different values and cultures, and grow up in different places than we grew up. But they're like, they never ask for that. They kind of I think they can see past it, and they're not like saying, can I get this if I do this? But praising that effort. And it's always hard when they ace a exam and they're like, I didn't even study for this. I'm like, all right, well, I'm like, I want to say good job, but like, well, make sure you do this well in the next one.
Yeah. And it's one of the reasons, honestly, to pivot a little bit, is why I like to homeschool, is because, well, if you ace, you may be the age of a 5th grader, but if you aced the 7th grade math test, then I should probably have you in 8th grade math, right? So why should I have you sitting in with all the other 5th graders in math when you already are acing 7th grade math, So it's one of those things that I really enjoy being able to do that. That's why I like to be able to challenge my kids in different ways. And it's, I cannot remember who said it, but it was basically like, you can have, if you put all of the animals and put them against each other, you judge a fish on how well it can climb a tree, the fish will always fail, right? So if their skill set is not climbing a tree, why am I judging them on climbing a tree? If my son's skill set is not math, like I want you to learn a minimum amount of math, like there's a threshold I need you to learn. But if you're really good at science, well, I should have you dig into science. So like, let's make this happen. Now, if you get to a point in science where you need to know calculus to be able to do some of the science you want to do, well, guess what? We got to have those two things catch up. But let's focus in on where you're strong at. And I'm not going to judge you for not doing well at one of the things that you're not strong at, which is why, again, I think praise the effort. Are you doing your best? If you're doing your best, I don't care. Like, if your best is your best and it's not good enough for a quote unquote passing grade, I don't necessarily care. Like as long as you're showing me that this is where you're at. So it's tough though, because not everybody sees it that way.
No, I think we share the same wavelength on that.
Yeah. So as you are kind of in this business, right? You've been doing this for I think a year and a half now, you said?
Yep. Yep.
All right, so you're a year and a half in. You've got 3 daughters that have now watched you go from being a at-home dad, helping out, doing all this stuff, but still kind of tinkering on the sides here and there. To man, I just bought a business and I'm jumping in on this. What is their kind of view of this business? How are they perceiving what you are doing on a daily basis now?
Yeah, it's interesting. The comments, they weren't used to see me wearing collared shirts, and I'm not in a tie very much, but I'll wear a sports coat or I'm in a suit every now and then, and they're just like, "Whoa, Dad, fancy Dad, where are you going?" I had a lot more of those comments early on when I was going out for meetings and conferences and that, but so I don't get as many of those comments now. Yeah, I think they're intrigued by it. Like my middle daughter is probably the more entrepreneurial one, and she's like, "Dad, you making money yet? Like, how are you making some money? Like, did you make money today? How do you make money in this business anyway?" And so it's hard for them to wrap their head around the exact business that I'm doing, but I think they get it. Before, I think I've run a film festival before, and I remember being at a trade show once, and my daughter being off talking to some booth, and some lady talking about some film she made, and then I think my daughter took her business card. She's like, "Dad, this lady's a filmmaker. You should go talk to them." And so I think my kids are even like that, because I deal with a lot of waste is one of the big categories. So dumpsters, reducing the cost of dumpsters, and now we'll be driving. We're like, "Dad, look, that dumpster's overflowing. Like, they're paying way too much, aren't they?" So they get it a bit. Yeah, I think they're excited to see me, doing something outside the house that's I'm enjoying, and that I'm ideally in bringing back to the family, obviously some income and things like that. But yeah, they're intrigued by it, and they wonder how many meetings am I on, where am I going for my meetings, what do I do at my meetings, which before they never had those questions at all. They would ask about the film festival a little bit, but most of it was all asking Mom about her day at work.
Yeah. How does that make you feel a little bit as they're more intrigued by what you're doing? What does that do for you personally?
Yeah, it feels like, I'm not, obviously first year in a business, so I'm not, pulling in a massive profit yet. And so, but it's here nor there to them. They don't know that, right? I could be making $2 million or I could be making $100,000. It wouldn't matter to them. It's, I think it's important for them that I'm still around enough to get them to their activities, to be there when they're sick. I've definitely canceled meetings when you get that call from school of like, "Hey, you got to come pick them up. They're puking," or whatever. And so I think it's important for them to see me doing something outside the home, which is nice. And seeing that, like, no, I can't pick you up, or Grandma's going to have to pick you up and drive you there. I know you want me to do it, but Grandma's going to have to do it today because Dad's got a meeting. And see that, like, I can't just drop everything all the time. Like, obviously there's important levels of importance of it dropping, but it's like, if your 5th swim practice of the week, like, I don't have to be at that. Grandma can drive you to that. And that's actually one of the big drivers to bring us to Calgary as we moved here this year, is to be close to family and to have that extra support, because we have grandparents in town now, and we have aunts and uncles and cousins, and that we can have those bigger family dinners, which is awesome. But then also, like, call the parents to chip in, grandparents. Like, they had to drive last night because I was at a networking event, and I try to have my networking events between 9 and 3 when the kids are at school, but a lot of networking events are evening events or dinner events. And so they see that, like, nope, sorry, Dad can't be there for your first swim practice this year, but Grandma's going to be there, and I'll be there, your other 92 practices you're going to have this year. So it's like, you don't want your kids to ever see you upset, or even like in an argument with your parent, with your wife or your spouse. But it's like, they say, it's important to kids realize that, like, no, the world doesn't revolve around them. And there's other things going out, and it's not always pussycats and rainbows, and we do get tired and we do get upset, and and at the same time we apologize, if it's appropriate, that we're people too. We're not just like on a pedestal, like a lot of times they think, especially when you're younger.
For sure. Yeah. And it's, I think that it is okay for kids to know that they are below your spouse. I think it's actually extremely important to know that, right? And it's not because, you're just, but without the spouse, the kids wouldn't even be there. So, and when you guys leave, guess who's still in the house? Mom and Dad. So mom and dad need to know that mom and dad are good, and mom and dad need to have those priorities at a different level. And it's not because we don't care about your swim. It's not because we don't care about, for my kid's case, your golf. It's not because it's because it's super important for us. And it's been so preached to my sons that my 10-year-old will look at me and say, Dad, it's been a little while since you've been on a date with mommy. You should probably go on a date with your mom or with mom.
Nice.
And I'm like, you're darn right I should, So it's funny enough. Today's Tuesday as we're recording this. So yesterday we booked a babysitter to go so my wife and I can go on a date.
Nice.
And then Sunday we realized, crap, the boys have like this trail life. It's like a Christian version of Boy Scouts. They have trail life tomorrow night. We have a babysitter so that you and I can go on a date, but our kids, we need to bring them to trail life. Like the babysitter can't drop them off at trail life and bring them back. So, well, all right, well, we'll keep the babysitter. Raquel got some work stuff done for the medical stuff on the military side, and I brought the kids to trail life. And we saw the babysitter. I was like, we finally booked a babysitter to go on a date, and we couldn't even go on a date. What the heck,
Man.
It's still one of those things that they need to know that there are priorities above them, and it's not because we don't care about them, but because we also need to represent and show to them what it means to prioritize your family as a whole, not the individual in the family. And sometimes prioritizing the family as a whole means that the individual may not have the impact in their day that they feel like they should have, but the family as a whole has a much larger impact. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But all right, as we're kind of getting close, man, we've covered so many different topics. But as we're kind of getting close to wrapping up here, is there anything that you wanted to discuss that you were like, man, I really want to talk about this as a dad or as a business owner or whatever that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I am a big fan of the role modeling, and I touched on it earlier. How what I always think about, like, what did I take from my parents as role models? And for me, like, athletics was really important. I do triathlons and ultra marathons, and so athletics in terms of endurance events, it's more than I'm trying to stay fit for a healthy life. It's a hobby, and just hobbies outside of work and play and family. I think it's important, and it's important, I think, that they see me running these races and doing hard things. I hopefully that inspires them, or and it's someday they're like, hey, I want to run a marathon. Like, Dad's run marathons, and I never want to be that one that, like, hey, like, I want to run a marathon with you. Like, we were in this 5K this weekend because my sister-in-law was doing a fundraiser for this animal adoption agency, and they had a fundraiser. So we went, and my 8-year-old was doing it. And I was like, really? Like, my wife signed her. I was like, the 8-year-old's going to, she's like, yeah, you're going to do it with her. I was like, she can do the 5K. I was like, oh. And I did it with her, and it was kind of a run walk, and I was like having to do everything to get her through it. And I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to be that dad that's doing a 5K and it's like running next to her, or got the iPhone, or just like, come on, you can do it. Like, I want them to, like, you go run your race, I'll be on the side cheering you on, or I'm going to run the race and I'll be at the finish line and I'll be cheering you on, or you're going to beat me. I always kind of cringe a bit when I see those parents running next to a kid. And it's like, no, I want it to be self-motivated, I want them to want to do it. And so I'm living my life, and I'm doing these really cool races and these adventures, and hopefully that, they see that, and, whether they do adventures or it turns into something else, but I want them to be obviously contributing citizens, but I also want them to live a very healthy life. I mentioned earlier, I run a vegan film festival. We're a vegan family. We live on a plant-based diet. And so that's a big thing in our family. And a big part of even my athletics too is being a role model for them, but also I think for the larger community, because I don't push my veganism on plant-based diet on people, but I get a lot of questions. And, when people are saying, I would never have the energy to do that. And I'm like, well, I'd like to think I'm a bit of a role model. I just did a 100-mile race a couple of years ago, and I'm doing okay here. So, where do you get your protein? Those questions. And I'm like, well, I'm doing pretty good, as a 50-year-old athlete here, still doing my stuff. So that's important to me, and just kind of that plant-based lifestyle.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that's, like you said, kind of showing up for your kids so they see you as a role model is where, because more things, and I've said it probably 100 times on this podcast, is more things are caught than taught. So let them see what a good example is, and I tell my boys all the time, and I'll say it again for the 1000th time on this podcast. My goal is to raise them to be better men than me. My goal is to raise my daughter to find a better man than me. And I want to be able to tell them good daggum luck, and that's, the only way to do that is to represent that and show that so that they see that and go, oh, that's what I need to be doing. That's what I need to do as an example for my kids when I have kids. And that's what I'm looking forward to is, dad, when he's, 40 whatever years old, still doing 20 pull-ups next to me on our pull-up bars. Like, yeah, like I may be broken, but I'm still going to do 20 pull-ups next to you, and do our thing, and show them that that's still something that we should be doing and striving for. So I love that you're doing the same thing with your daughters, and being an example for them, to especially, I think we need, no matter what society says, I think we need strong fathers at home, that their kids get to see what it means to have a strong, positive male influence in their life. There's way too much negative male influences out there and negative female influences out there. So if we can control our family and say, hey, this is where the positivity comes in our family. This is what we're striving for in our family. And this is what it means for me is to be a strong, positive influence in my kid's life. So I want to encourage you to keep on keeping on that front and be a good example for your kiddos. So, well, Shawn,
thank you.
I thank you so very much for jumping on. It was awesome to have you on here, digging into a lot more of the kid stuff than the business stuff. But that's the beauty of this podcast. You never know where it's going to go. But if folks are hearing this and they, maybe they have a business they want to reach out to you about and maybe utilize your services, or maybe they just want to learn more about who you are and what you got going on, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can find me on Schooley Mitchell's website, SchooleyMitchell.com, SCHOOLE Mitchell.com, and you can find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn, Shawn Stratton, Schooley Mitchell, Shawn Stratton, Calgary. You should be able to find me there, and that's probably the best way to reach out. Yeah. Yeah, and we went into detail on the business in the Delegate That podcast. So obviously, if you want to learn more about the cost reduction business that I operate, check out that episode too.
Very good. Yep. And a reminder, that's episode 33 over at the Delegate That podcast. We'll try to have a link in the show notes for that as well. But Shawn, thank you so very much. Everybody listening, I greatly appreciate if you're here an hour and a half into this conversation. I hope it was a beneficial conversation for you as well. Please comment below. Let us know what your favorite part was. Like and subscribe, all of that stuff. Give us a good positive rating. It means a lot for the algorithms. It means a lot for me and the folks who are coming on this podcast. So thank you everybody for listening. Thank you again, Shawn, for joining in, and we will see everybody on the next show.
Thank you so much for listening to the BizDad Podcast. We hope you found some value in your time here with us, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's show, please subscribe and share so you and your friends won't miss our upcoming episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Rumble, where we continue these discussions and share more valuable content. Be the dad you know you need to be and run your business in a way you're proud to share with your kids. Keep crushing it.